Commissioners, once the IBIS analysts have the particular docket or case files with the exhibit that needs to be acquired on the system, they will first capture the details of the case. That is the station name, case number, the lab number, the details of the exhibit, the cartridge case, the caliber, the make. They will capture how it is marked. They will first capture the image, the information on the system. And thereafter, they will instruct the system to open what you call a cartridge case holder. Once the system does that, once the information is captured, the specimens or the cartridge case will be inserted into the cartridge case holder and closed. Once closed, the system automatically scans through high definition, scan through the images of that cartridge case, as I've indicated, and store that image in the system. It captures it in high definition, so it magnifies the mark, which cannot be seen through naked eye. The system magnifies the marks and capture them on the system, commissioners.
And Brigadier, before we get to the next stages, maybe we can illustrate what you're describing in relation to the images that are scanned by going to the annexure file at page 5, where you have attached the printouts from the exhibits. Well, it starts at page 1. You've attached printouts from the exhibits in the Bramley file. Let's start at page 1. And can you just describe to the commissioners what are these images that we see on the right-hand side of page 1 of the annexure?
Commissioners, this is the back of a cartridge case. In the middle, if you see on the pic, that's where the firing pin hits the primer in order to ignite.
In our top stories, Mohlahlana's bail appeal application denied and education activist speaks ahead of AfriForum's court case. Good morning. Controversial businessman Vusimuzi Cat Mohlahlana's bail appeal application has been denied by the High Court in Johannesburg. In September, Mohlahlana unsuccessfully applied for bail, with the lower court ruling he's a flight risk and a danger to society. Mohlahlana is accused of orchestrating the failed assassination of his former partner, Tebogo Tobejane, in October 2023. The Activists and Citizens Forum is questioning the lack of arrests in the Tembisa Hospital corruption scandal, despite the Special Investigating Unit identifying suspects and confiscating assets. Over 2 billion rand has allegedly been stolen from the hospital through corruption, with syndicates working with corrupt officials to manipulate the tender system. The forum is calling on the Investigation Directorate Against Corruption to immediately arrest those implicated. Dennis Bloom is the Activists and Citizens Forum spokesperson.
The reason why we are calling on the IDEC to act against these looters is because people have died in this process. We cannot read this thing lightly and think that things must just go. When we are listening to the Madanga Commission and to the other committee, you can see that serious problems in the criminal justice system, not only in the police, but the entire criminal justice.
4 men arrested for kidnapping are set to appear before the Pretoria North Magistrates Court today for a formal bail application. The suspects were arrested earlier this month after Tshwane police spotted their vehicle on the R80 highway and found a 42-year-old kidnapped victim inside. They face multiple charges, including kidnapping, fraud, robbery with aggravating circumstances, impersonating a police officer, and unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition. Nonhlanhla Chingila reports.
On the 10th of October, the accused allegedly impersonating law enforcement by wearing Hawks t-shirt, stopped a vehicle that was traveling by a 42-year-old man. They reportedly pointed a rifle, forced him out of the vehicle, handcuffed him, covered his head with a t-shirt, and abducted him in a white Golf GTI. The Tshwane Vehicle Crime Investigation Unit intercepted the suspicious vehicle on the R80 highway, discovering that the registration number belonged to a different vehicle. A search yielded an AK-47 rifle, live ammunition, police dashboard lights, cable ties, a vehicle siren, and t-shirts with police emblems.
Education activist Hendrik Makanita says he firmly supports the publication of matric results. He believes matriculants should be allowed to celebrate their achievements with their parents. He added that through transparency, the community can hold the system accountable. Makanita's comments come ahead of AfriForum's court case on the publication of matric results in newspapers and online platforms. The case will be heard in the High Court in Pretoria today and tomorrow. The lobby group is in favor of the publication of results. Makanita explains.
While at the same time it ensures that performance data remains accessible to all South Africans. Any attempt to suppress this information undermines both public oversight and the recognition that the learners deserve for the many years of hard work. Open access to results is not just a tradition, it is a vital part of an accountable education system.
And finally, the Indian Electoral Commission is expected to announce the first phase of nationwide revision of the electoral roll. Around 10 states are likely to be covered. The Commission also cited possible entry of foreigners into the rolls over the years as a reason for the exercise. The BBC's Anbarasan Itharajan has the details.
India's top polling body argues that the special revision is needed to avoid duplication and to delete the names of the dead. The main opposition Congress party described a recent verification exercise in Bihar state as vote theft after millions of valid names were left off the list. It accused the Election Commission of colluding with the governing Hindu nationalist BJP to help it win the elections in Bihar. The electoral authorities and the BJP have dismissed the allegations as baseless. Opposition parties point out that vulnerable and minority groups may find it difficult to produce the extensive paperwork required to prove their citizenship.
Recapping the top story, controversial businessman Vusumuzi Matlala's bail appeal application has been denied by the High Court in Johannesburg. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Whichever is applicable, commissioners.
And then it says supervisor. And what normally goes under well, in this case, there is no entry on supervisor. Is that a problem?
No, some of the field.
Well, in this case, there is no entry on supervisor. Is that a problem?
No, some of the fields are there, but you may not use all of them, commissioners, on the system.
Occurrence, is that the date of the alleged crime?
Commissioner, I must just first explain how the system uses the date, the format. You know, we use the format, we start with the day and the month and the year. But the system is designed in such a way that it starts with the month and the day and the year. In other words, this particular entry was created on the 4th, which is April, and the 30th, that is the day and the year. It's sometimes confusing because this is not the format that we are used to when we write date, commissioners.
It's sort of North American date format.
That is how the system is designed, commissioners.
Where does the system come from?
Commissioner, the system was designed by Canadians. It comes from Canada, commissioners.
And then creation, what does that refer to?
Commissioner, that is when the analyst acquired these specimens or the date. So it means it was acquired on the 9th. I mean, again, that 9 is September. The day is the 6th of September 2024. That is, and the time, 11:01. That is when the analyst acquired these specimens on the IBES system, commissioners.
And then created by Modise AS, that would be the analyst who first acquired it on the system.
That is correct, commissioners.
Then there are modification dates. And how would an exhibit of this nature ever be modified?
It's also one of the fields that is on the system. After acquisition, the system synchronizes. Maybe after every 10 specimens that we have acquired, you synchronize. It's just to take your work and push it to the data concentrator where the comparison is going to take place. But those are the fields that are there. Obvious, once she is done with the acquisition, she will press OK, then that will signify the modification.
I mean, in this case, there is no modification because the date and time of the
is the same.
Are the same.
That is correct, commissioners.
Then under comments, it says 29 hits. Can you explain that?
Commissioner, it's just one field that the analyst feels complete, but at this point, I can't say what that 29 hits is signifying, Commissioner, because here we were just acquiring. We're just in a process of acquiring. So it's a comment on the system as well, which the analyst has an option to complete or not.
But would that, I mean, is that a comment that has to be included by the analyst, or is that something that the system will automatically, if the system records hits at a later stage, and we know the system does, and then as we take you through your evidence, you'll explain how hits are confirmed. Who would have put in 29 hits? Would the system generate that itself, or would would someone have had to have entered it? And if someone has entered it, would you be able to trace when someone had entered it?
Commissioner, this comment is a comment which would have been completed by the system automatic because when these printouts were made, there were processes that took place on the background of the system. So this would be a comment that comes from the system.
So if we go to the bottom of the page, we have a date. And if it's in the North American bottom left-hand corner, if we have the North American dating system, that's 20 October this year. It's last week. Bottom left-hand corner. Do you see that date?
I see it, commissioners.
So are you then saying that as of that date, 20 October, the ABIS system would have recorded 29 hits for this, on this specific cartridge?
That is correct, commissioners.
Can we go further down and look at the line items on cartridge case exhibit details? Before we do that, is it possible through the system to go back in time and to see, does the system have functions that will tell us that although on the 20th of October 2025 the system had recorded 29 hits, at say December 2024 the system had recorded no hits, or it had recorded 5 hits. Does the system have that functionality?
As I said, the system keeps logs of everything which is happening. So if you go back, but with hits, the operator will always update if a hit is made. And on the day when they update the system, it will give history of that transaction. So say, for example, if the hits were identified maybe in December 2024 as being 20 possible hits, and they update them, and maybe in January the hits are confirmed, the operator will go to the system and update that those 20 possible hits are now confirmed, and he will tick them. So that track and trace will be there on the system, commissioners.
And could we get a timeline? I mean, would you be able to generate a timeline from the system of when confirmed hits on these cartridges, and indeed on all cartridges from all 4 of the guns seized in Bramley, when confirmed hits were first recorded and subsequently updated and then updated again? Is that facility on the system?
That is correct, Commissioner. The system keeps a head stamp for any activity that takes place on the system.
So would you be able to give to the Commission then a timeline on the progress of hits on these 4 test cartridges related to these four weapons?
I will be able to do that if provided with time to do that, Commissioners. I will be able to do that.
Thank you very much, Brigadier. That would be very helpful.
And just below the date, 20 October 2025, there's Mthembu TJ. Do you see that?
That's correct. Yes, I see that, Commissioners.
Yes. What role or function would Mthembu TJ have played, if any?
He is one of our technicians who normally does the viewings on the match point. After the product, after the acquisition, there must be someone who does viewings. And he is one who does that final product of viewing to confirm if there are any possible hits, Commissioners.
And in this case, would he have been the person who printed out these images for inclusion in your statement?
That is correct, Commissioners.
Brigadier, if we can then go down to the line items under cartridge case exhibit details.
So, Mr. Chairperson, maybe before you go to that, let me just ask one last question. Brigadier, the way it says event type, and you have illegal possession / sale, where does that kind of description of the event come from?
Commissioners, the system gives you a drop box with listed offenses, but it's not an exhaustive list. So the analyst will check the front page of the case file, what is the charge, and they will go and choose. If it's murder, they will go, the system will normally they use homicide. They will say homicide, will choose attempted murder. But you have a situation in some instances that, because the list is not exhaustive, some of the charges that are on the docket, you may find that you don't find on the list. And in some instances, in order for the process to proceed, maybe the analyst will just choose the one which is more relevant to that particular case.
If I can possibly clarify in this case, this is the Bramley case file, which relates to the arrest of the parties and the seizure of the weapons in their possession. Murder is not a charge in the Bramley case file. Murder is a charge in the Vereeniging case file. So I suspect that the Bramley case file, the primary charge is illegal possession of weapons, which may explain why the event type is flagged illegal possession.
I concur, Commissioners.
Can we then go down to the line items on cartridge case exhibit details? Exhibit number, can you just describe what that is?
Each exhibit is marked with a unique number, followed by the number which the exhibit is assigned to. We start with the lab number. So this particular cartridge case was marked with the Bramley lab number 193045/2024, capital letter AA10. As it was collected from the crime scene by the crime scene, the person who was processing the crime scene. It could be a member from LCRC, a local criminal record center. As they see the exhibit on the scene, they mark it, they give it a unique number of where they find it. They decide on the numbering. That numbering will be written in the covering letter. That specimen will be packaged, separate with that numbering, AA10. When it arrives at the lab, what the analyst will do will take an engraver and engrave the lab number of that case at the bottom of the cartridge case, followed by that unique number from the crime scene, which is AA10. That is the unique number of this cartridge case, commissioners.
Then caliber, that speaks for itself. That's it's a 9mm parabellum. That's the caliber of the firearm that's from which the cartridge cases are discharged. A make?
Commissioner, at the back of the head stamp, each manufacturer, they write their manufacturer name. Say, for example, if it's PMP, which is Pretoria Metal, they will write at the back of the head stamp PMP. So different manufacturers have got their own different head stamps in order to identify the ammunition. So such information is also recorded on the IB system, commissioners.
Is that what we see on page 2 of the same annexure?
That is correct, commissioners.
Then firing pin shape, that seems self-explanatory. Composition?
Commissioners, there's different material to manufacture cartridges. You've got brass, you've got nickel, you've got steel, so you must explain the material. So this is just to explain this one in particular was made of brass, or is made of brass.
Then double cast composition, which has been left blank, what would sometimes be put there?
It's also related to the material, but in most instances, some of those fields that are additional, it doesn't harm if you don't complete them, if you don't have the information, commissioners.
Then category, you have crime evidence. Maybe if you can illustrate what goes in there by comparing page 1 with page 2.
Commissioners, the IBC is a database. We acquire piece of evidence from crime scene, that is cartridge cases, bullets that are collected from crime scenes. We acquire them on the system. We also acquire tests that we test in the lab. We acquire them on the system. So when you acquire, the system gives you option to choose. If you are acquiring a cartridge case that comes from the crime scene, you will choose crime scene evidence. If you acquire a test specimen, the system will ask you and you will choose a test. So that is why there's a difference between this field of category.
Then again, if you can explain what the category firearm exhibit refers to, and it may be useful again to compare the blank entry on 1 with the entry on 2.
If the commissioners can check the exhibit number on that page 2, it says 084 TC1. So, in short, the marking that is the marking of the test that the analyst would have used to shoot test with this particular firearm. The analyst, if the firearm has a serial number, the analyst will take the last 3 digits of the firearm, of the serial number. Say, for example, it's 27084. The analyst will take the 084 and add TC1. T means test cartridge 1. Normally we fire 2 tests. The second test will be 084 TC2. And he will engrave this number at the bottom of the cartridge case. So this is how the test was engraved for this particular firearm, commissioners.
So, if I can just take that further, page 2 is a test cartridge. So
That's
it's
correct.
a test cartridge fired from a gun seized at a crime scene.
That is correct, commissioners.
Under firearm exhibit, you have a number for the gun that was seized. It's an exhibit number for the gun.
In other words, the firearm serial number was not erased, commissioners. Yes.
Would the serial number of the gun be included as firearm exhibit? Under that line item, firearm exhibit, if you have the serial number, would you ordinarily include it there? Because if I look at the other exhibits relating to the other weapons, everything is recorded as gun 1, gun 2, gun 3. There are no serial numbers recorded in relation to the line item firearm exhibit.
You will include the serial number, commissioners.
Now, because it's a test cartridge, you know which gun it was fired from, so you can enter something under firearm exhibit. That's correct?
That's correct, commissioners.
Whereas, because the cartridge found on the crime scene was just found on the crime scene, you can't, at this stage, enter any details in relation to firearm exhibit because you don't know which firearm it was fired from, or you have no conclusive proof that it
That is correct, commissioners.
Occurrence again would be the date 30th of April 2024 when the crime took place. What does the reception line item refer to?
Again, commissioners, some of the fields that are there, which are not compulsory, commissioners.
We've then got creation dates. It says created by Modise AS. And there is a modification a few minutes later. And it says last acquisition also a few minutes later. What do those modification and last acquisition dates refer to?
When the acquisition process starts, it records the time, and when the process finishes, it records the time. Then the analyst must now instruct the system to release the specimens. So all those processes are recorded, commissioners.
What is BF class characteristic?
Again, it's some of the fields that are not compulsory, but are there on the system, commissioners.
And then finally, there are dimensions for the firing pin outline. Sorry, what does BF start for? BF inner outline, BF outer outline?
This is the dimension that the system automatically gives to the diameter of the back of the cartridge case, commissioners. So those fields are automatically filled by the system, commissioners.
And do you know what BF stands for?
Commissioner, out of now, I cannot conclusively say what it does, what does it stand for, Commissioner BF.
Thank you, Brigadier. This it was a long diversion from paragraph 17.1 of your statement. So let's get back to 17.2. We've dealt with image capture and acquisition. Next stage is database storage. Can you just describe what happens there?
Commissioner, once the acquisition of the specimens is completed, the next phase is the database storage. In other words, the digital images and associated data are stored in a central database, and the system can store hundreds and thousands of pieces of evidence.
Then the third stage, automated comparison.
That's where now, once everything has been stored, the system starts to compare now, to look for similarities. The system uses advanced mathematical algorithms to check if there are any similarities. In other words, it runs the specimen which was acquired recently with specimens which were previously acquired on the system. It runs it back and forth to check if there's any similarities. You can refer this as a internet or Google engine search, where when you go on the system, you want to find out a particular make and model of a vehicle, you enter the particulars. This is the process where the system does that now. So it compares now, and similar as the internet engine search, commissioners.
And how long after acquisition would the system take to complete its process of automated comparison?
Commissioner, if the network is stable, this process can take 5 to 24 hours.
But it's a process that the system does.
That's correct, commissioners.
It doesn't, and it's a process that is not, at this stage, 100% accurate. It's putting forward to you, or the system is identifying a range of, shall we say, potential hits.
That is correct, commissioners.
So at some stage, an analyst is now going to have to come back and sit in front of a monitor and call up this case file and go through the potential hits to see which of these potential hits graduate to the status of likely hits or hits that should be confirmed manually by microscopic analysis.
That is correct, Commissioner. That is a process which we called viewings. In other words, that's a process where the operator will come and sit in front of the system and view all the candidates that the system has identified as possible hits. And if he's satisfied that there are similarities indeed, then he will make a printout of those images and then request the physical specimens in a form of case file, which are filed in the case files, for them to be compared manually through a comparison microscope.
So there are two further stages. You've got the expert who then sits in front of the screen looking at the potential hits and identifying which ones look good to him or her, that would be 17.4.
That is correct, Commissioners.
And then you've got 17.5, which is, experts now sat in front of the screen. The screen has given 40 potential hits. The expert has said 25 of these look really good. I want to requisition the original exhibits for each of these 25. That's the process that you describe in 17.5.
That is correct, Commissioners.
And then the last stage of the process is the original exhibits then come in, and a different expert sits in front of a microscope with the original test cartridge from the case file in one microscope and the 25 requisitioned exhibits one after another in the other microscope.
That is correct, Commissioners.
Can you explain to the Commissioner how resource constraints delay this process? So you started at 17.3, and you Ms. Poy has gone ahead of me and is putting up your backlogs and your personnel figures yet, but we'll deal with them even later. But for now, what I want to understand, or I want you to explain to the Commission, is there are several stages in this process. A ballistics examiner has finished the first manual examination and test firing process in the forensic lab, has signed off on a report. That report comes to ABIS. The first stage in ABIS is going to be image capture, and that you deal with in 17.1. You need an analyst to be available to do that image capture. How long does it take ordinarily between the moment that the case file arrives at the ABIS section to the point at which an analyst is able to enter those exhibits and acquire them in the ABIS system?
Commissioner, because the case upon completion by a ballistic analyst must go through the administration process where a new IBIS lab number must be generated. And after that, that case must be assigned to an analyst before it could be acquired on the IBIS system. So during that process, due to the number of cases that we received and the limited resources, it may take around 3 months before you are able to acquire that specific case under normal circumstances, because the cases must queue. And as they queue, they go through the process that I've mentioned. Lab numbers are generated. At some point, they are assigned to the operators acquires them. They must go back to be reviewed in order to be finalized on the system. So it goes through that process. So in any event, it's a process that is dependent on the resources that you have at your disposal, Commissioners.
Now, how many acquisition terminals do you have at your office? Those machines that will take the high-density image photographs of cartridges?
Commissioners, we have 8 brass tracks. The brass tracks are cartridge cases stations. We acquire cartridge case on them. We have 8 of them. And then we have got 3 bullet tracks where we acquire bullets.
Slow down. Let's deal with the brass tracks first. So maybe I interrupted too soon. So you've got 3 bullet tracks, bullet photographing machines, yes, and 8 cartridge photographing machines.
That's correct, Commissioner.
Do you have a complement of analysts that are able to operate those machines on a full-time basis?
Commissioner, for the longest time, we never had that luxury to have a complement staff to body, what I can call warm bodies to sit in front of those machines. With the current strength now, we are not able to operate all the existing machines.
How many machines are you able to operate with your staff at the moment?
Commissioners, as I've said, we've got 8 brass tracks. At a particular time, you may find out that there's only 4 that are fully occupied.
How much do you have to pay in terms of license fees for the system?
Commissioners, we call that the service level agreement. We pay a monthly fee of over 3.8 million per month for the maintenance of the system, commissioners.
So you're paying a monthly fee of 3.8 million a month, but you can really only use half the capacity of that system because you only can operate 4 of the 8 input centers with your current staff.
As it will be outlined later with the figures, unfortunately, that is the reality, commissioners.
And you earlier said that because of the staff shortages, it may take 3 months before the ballistics file, from when the ballistics file arrives at your offices to the point at which the first image is taken of the cartridges in the ballistic file.
Yes, that is correct, Commissioner. And I must add, we are only talking about the first phase.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get to next. So let's talk about the second phase. We've now spent maybe 3 months after the file arrives, and the cartridges have been digitally acquired in the system. 24 hours later, the system has decided that there are maybe 40 other crimes around the country to which these digital images are linked. But you need an analyst to sit in front of a different screen now and to call up each one of the 40 images in the system to see how accurate those potential matches are. How many analysts have you got to do that process?
Commissioners, I've got 8 match point stations, but so far only have 3 full-time analysts that can do the viewings. And sometimes I give them other tasks, for example, to assist with statistics, but they are full-time, there are 3. So in other words, 5 of the mesh point are not occupied. And
sorry, can you just, I just want to be clear that I understood what your answer was. You've got 8 workstations where these matches can be verified on screen, but you only have 3 analysts who can do that process, who are trained and at your disposal to do that process, apart from the fact that you may need them to do other things as well.
That is correct, Commissioner. And if I may add, because of the complications on the viewings, it requires that the person must spend 8 hours watching the screen, so they become exhausted. It becomes exhausting. They can only view around 200 images per day, and yet you've got over 28,000 that needs to be viewed. And per day they can only view about 200, and there are only 3. So that tells you the extent of the challenges in terms of human resource that we are faced with, commissioners.
But again, going back to the layout that SAPS, or the expenditure that SAPS incurs on the system gives you 8 viewing stations. As part of an overall package, you're paying, I forget the figure, was it 3.6 million a month?
3.8 million.
3.8 million a month. but you can only utilize 3 of the workstations because of your staffing restraints. The ballistics file arrives at your section to the point at which the ballistics are in us 3 months from the point at which the ballistics file arrives at your section to the point at which the ballistics are acquired. What's the delay between acquisition of the ballistics and expert review of the comparisons that the system has thrown up 1 day after that, the first 3 months?
Commissioners, in terms of age analysis of unviewed images, you may find out we have got images that are on the system not being viewed for more than a year. I'm speaking under correction, but it's quite a lengthy period. Ideally, you want to have this process on as it happens, but it's not possible because of this lack of human resource to carry out the functions, Commissioners.
And can I just clarify in relation to the lack of human resources? Clearly, there's an obvious shortage of at least 5 additional analysts because you've got 8 workstations and only 3 people to view. But you mentioned earlier that there are problems with people staring at a screen for 8 hours in a day, and you could only do about each person could only do about 200, I think you said. In terms of best practice for the system, do you need more than 1 analyst per workstation? I mean, should people be doing this on a rotational basis, or is it, is it 1 analyst per workstation?
With the level of experience that the analysts have now, you would prefer to have 1 analyst dedicated to a working station, and the other working stations also additional analysts dedicated to those working station, Commissioners.
So to get maximal use of the system, you would need another 5 analysts 5 trained analysts to be doing the viewing, the expert review on the system.
Commissioner, if we want to achieve the real-time viewings, we'll need additional members, yes, Commissioners.
So that was the next stage. And
just before that, and Brigadier, if you say you would have to have more, does that mean that the more would then work on the same workstations? Where exactly would the more be fitted in?
Commissioner, I've indicated the figures of the equipment that we have.
Yes.
And in terms of the figures of the human resource that we have, we are not able to occupy all the working stations.
Yes, I heard that, yeah. But you see, here's what I have in my mind. You say there's a problem that out of the 28,000 that is generated, an analyst can only look at 2. That to me means that even if you were to have enough analysts for each one of the workstations, which I understand to be 1 analyst, 1 analyst, 1 analyst for all of them. So you are covered in terms of analyst 2 workstation. That would not address the problem of being able to see only 200 or to view only 200 out of 28,000. Do you follow me?
I follow.
So how can that be addressed? Let's assume that there is an analyst per machine, so you are not running short in terms of the workstations. But how would the 200, only 200 out of 28,000, how would or could that be addressed?
Commissioners, the 200 that I mentioned is just the norm so that we can be able to measure the performance. But there's no hard and fast rule that they must view 200, for example, because in some instances you find out some results are easy to eliminate immediately. But this is the minimum that for you to meet your target, you must view this minimum. But there's no hard and fast rule. Sometimes you can view more, but in some instances we rely on overtime. So when there's overtime, they view even more. But
let's say they do their best, their utmost, work overtime. But what do you think is the maximum that's humanly possible to get anywhere near 28,000?
Commissioners, if the person is dedicated only to that process, we can be able to get maximum production, adding overtime, maybe even 500 and more. The only challenge is that, like I've indicated, they are multitasked. They perform other duties as well. They are not only concentrating on that process only. And again, the first process is not stopping. It's a conveyor belt. It's continuing. So whatever they view, there's more additions coming in as well.
Yes. And 500 is still a drop in the ocean if we're looking at 28,000. Okay. Now, why have more workstations then if there are these practical difficulties? What are the extra workstations for?
When we acquired the system, we looked into the capacity because our aim was that we must be able to work on real time. As a crime occurs, we must be able to acquire the specimen, run it on the system. So, therefore, we wanted to have that number of workstations with a certain number of analysts that can work on the stations. But naturally, with time, other members resign or they go for greener pastures, they leave, we don't replace them. So eventually we end up in this environment where we are, where we have so limited members that can work on the system. In some, for example, in Port Elizabeth, I think they are only left with 3 members that are working at IBIS, and they are doing everything, just only 3 of them.
Do I understand your response to mean that at some point you did have enough numbers per workstation, but that the numbers dwindled with time?
That is correct, Commissioners.
And you are stuck with having to pay 3.8 million per month for the extra workstations?
That is correct, Commissioners.
Is that because of the contract? You cannot get out of that. It just has to be that way.
It's contract. It's contract,
So
Commissioner.
you're stuck with it. All right, let me see. Thank you.
We've reached the end of stage 2 now, the expert review. And we've discussed the difficulties of resource constraints and the delays that causes. But once your expert has now viewed the images online and has said...
I'm very, very sorry. There was another question I already had in mind, but because I asked a few, I forgot. My apologies, Mr. Shaskatsen. Seeing that at what I would call the end points, there's the point at which there's human involvement, and once the comparisons have been made, the analyst then calls for the original exhibits themselves. So there's human intervention there. And then finally also there's human intervention once the exhibits have arrived. The analyst again is involved at that stage. And I think in terms of paragraph 17.6 of your statement, that is the last stage, as it were. Again, as I say, human involvement. So at 2 stages of the process. Is the process at the 2 stages where there's human involvement not susceptible to manipulation? I know you can always go back to what the machine itself generated and establish what the true position is, but still, isn't there susceptibility to manipulation at the stages where human beings now do something and make their own reports based on what they saw in terms of what was generated by the workstation.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Commissioner. I'll start with the second stage, the phase 2, where the intervention of human beings is required to view. You need integrity, because I can run through the system and say I've viewed them and mark them viewed. So you need integrity there. If the person does and mark them viewed, from the management point of view, because we check those things, we'll start to check. I mean, we are no longer generating possible hits. What could be the problem? Then when you go there, fortunately, the system has got checks and balances. For example, if I've marked something as viewed today, because it's a continuous comparison, it will come back again, even if I marked it. So it's not all lost. But human beings, that's why you need someone with...
That is giving evidence before the Madanga Commission this morning. It's now 11 o'clock. Let's take the latest news update.
Thank you, Cathy. On the top stories, Vusi Cathy Mohlahlana's bail appeal application denied, and Basic Education Committee awaits a report from Milnerton High School. For SFM News, I am Onde Lambana, and a very good morning. Controversial businessman Vusi Cathy Mohlahlana's bail appeal application has been denied by the High Court in Johannesburg. In September, Mohlahlana unsuccessfully applied for bail with the Alexandra Magistrates Court, ruling that he is a flight risk and a danger to society. Mohlahlana is accused of orchestrating the failed assassination of his former girlfriend, Tebogo Tobejana, in October 2023. Sasha Naidu reports.
Vusi Mohlahlana will have to remain behind bars following his second failed bid to be released in bail. In his judgment, Acting Judge du Plessis ruled that the interest of justice will not be served by releasing him on bail. Plessis also states that he is unable to differ with the magistrate's findings in a judgment in regards to Mohlahlana being a flight risk, and specifically the conclusion where it was stated that he has both the means and the potential opportunity to evade trial. This is despite Mohlahlana's defense claiming that the Alexandra Magistrates Court erred in its decision to deny him bail. Sasha Naidu, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The Madanga Commission of Inquiry into Criminality and Corruption in the country's criminal justice system has resumed, with ballistic expert Brigadier Mishak Mkabela giving evidence into the type of crime scene analysis he conducts for the police service. Mkabela is the head of ballistic section based at the Forensic Science Laboratory in Silverton, Pretoria. Chief Evidence Leader Advocate Matthew Chasklason asked Mkabela to describe the nature of his job.
Ballistics has got 3 subsections. That is ballistics analysis, which deals with firearms-related cases. We then have what we call IBIS, which refers to Automated Ballistics Identification System, which falls under ballistics. And we have a further subsection which is called Mechanical and Metallurgical Engineering section.
The Activists and Citizens Forum is questioning the lack of arrests in the Tembisa Hospital corruption scandal, despite the Special Investigating Unit identifying suspects and confiscating assets. Over 2 billion rand has been allegedly stolen from the hospital through corruption, with syndicates working with corrupt officials to manipulate the tender system. The forum is calling on the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption to immediately arrest those implicated, including alleged kingpin Hangwani Baumela. Dennis Bloom is the Activists and Citizens Forum spokesperson.
The reason why we are calling on the IDEC to act against these looters is because people have died in this process. We cannot read this thing lightly and think that things must just go. When we are listening to the Madanga Commission and to the other committee, you can see that serious problems in the criminal justice, not only in the police, but the entire criminal justice.
A man has been gunned down in Maitland, Cape Town, in a suspected gang-related incident. Police spokesperson Wesley Twigg says officers found the victim with gunshot wounds to his body yesterday afternoon. No arrests have been made.
The victim was declared deceased on the scene by medical personnel. According to reports, the victim who approached the unknown suspect who shot him before fleeing the scene.
Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Basic Education is awaiting a report from Milnerton High School in Cape Town following an internal disciplinary hearing of 8 learners who were suspended for allegedly bullying a fellow learner. In a viral video, a group of boys can be seen violently assaulting a fellow learner with a hockey stick. 8 learners have since been suspended. Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education, Joy Maimela, says they are closely monitoring the case.
The Portfolio Committee is really dismayed. We are really horrified about that video. And then we went then to the school to try and probe and find out what really happened, and as a result, what has happened to the school and the department address the issue. We understand that the school is going to be having or holding a disciplinary hearing, and moving from there, the school will then give us a full report on the sanctions and what has happened with the disciplinary hearing.
Recapping the top story, controversial businessman Vusumuzi Ketmatlala's bail appeal application has been denied by the High Court in Johannesburg. I am Wandilambana for SFM News Headlines at 11:30.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable. You receive up to 745,000 rand worth of legal services per year. Our range of plans include cover for you, your spouse, children, and extended family. Plans include cover for civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Whether it's protection orders, gender-based violence, uncontested divorce, or poor service, your Clientele Legal lawyer will be there to assist you. Our services are convenient. Simply pick up the phone and call your lawyer, or send us an email and we'll get back to you. All plans include a bail benefit of up to 5,000 rand, and we'll go to the police station and pay it for you. Plus, Clientele Legal offers you 24-hour telephonic legal advice. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Expresso Morning Show has been nominated in 5 categories in the 3rd Annual National Film and Television Awards South Africa.
It all happens on Saturday, the 22nd of November 2025 at the South African State Theatre in Pretoria. And public voting is open from the 13th of October to the 20th of November at midday.
So visit nationalfilmacademy.com, register and vote for Expresso Morning Show in all 5 categories.
Then, of course, catch us weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. right here on S3.
Gordon Ramsay is back, and your favorite kitchen disasters are still somehow in business. New season, same confused chefs, terrifying walk-ins, and enough grease to fry your Wi-Fi. Watch as Gordon tries to fix the unfixable with nothing but sheer rage, British sarcasm, and an iron stomach. Kitchen Nightmares Season 8, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. on S3. Come for the food, stay for the emotional damage.
This October month, SFM joins the world in breast cancer awareness. We bring you conversations that highlight the importance of early detection, survivor stories that inspire hope, and expert advice that could save lives. Together, let's spread awareness and support the fight against breast cancer. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
So you thought you were building a business in this economy, but day by day, somehow it grew. You kept going when the freezer didn't freeze, the bucket didn't budge, and the bank balance barely blinked. So you thought you were building a business. You weren't. It was building you. Because this isn't just what you do anymore. It's who you are. And you don't trust just anybody to protect it. Chat to your broker about Old Mutual Insure Business Insurance. Protect what built you. Old Mutual Insure Limited is a licensed FSP and non-life insurer.
Get ready for the biggest flavors from South Africa's smallest chefs. The Taste Master Junior, every Tuesday evening at 7:30 on SABC2, follows 12 talented teens as they whisk, chop, and bake their way through fun foodie challenges and try to impress the judges Zola Nene and Fritz Squin, who will rise to the top and be crowned South Africa's next culinary star. Don't miss the Taste Master Junior. Tuesday evenings at 7:30, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. It's 9 after 11 o'clock. Welcome to the third and final hour of the show. So we do continue with our coverage of the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, where today we're hearing from a ballistics expert, Brigadier Mkhabela, and he's been describing some of the challenges that police are facing in as far as the technical expertise that goes into some of this work. Of course, without it, then when they have to go before the courts, the credibility of the evidence that they present is cast into question. And you need experts like Brigadier Mkhabela to help tell the story and to help, of course, provide the evidence for the accusations and the allegations, rather, that are being made in front of the courts. I see some of you still picking up on where we started things off this morning on the open line. So we'll take just a couple of those WhatsApp voice notes as we get ready to take you back to that Commission of Inquiry.
Good morning, Katrina and SFM listeners. Listen, whether Bekitele, what's his name again, our general, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, apologized to him. He apologized because Mkhwanazi didn't have a proof that there was a transaction made in terms of payment to him. But all these ANC people, Matlala has been in charge of them. And it's a fact. We cannot just deny that. And all these people, Kathy, they have just destroyed our country. I hear people say, Bekitele, what. Aye, they are all the same. That's the end of the story. There's nothing that Bekitele has said that will change my mind about the ANC's government, the ANC's administration. Good morning. It's Marumo in Mahikin. Good morning.
Hi, Cathy and SFM listeners. Cathy, we need the testimony of the president now. Fill some gaps here. Because obviously we want to know how legal was the disbanding. The president, I think, should need to come and account there, as he also had a meeting with the minister into that regards. Thank you from PE.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you? 2Gs, Pretoria. Cathy, Bekitele has got a case to answer. He has got a case to answer. He's trying to downplay his meetings with Matala, like to make it look so simple, and he can do it since he's no longer with the service, etc. He has got a case to answer. That man, he cannot tell us that he can be hosted. That man that he seems to say he doesn't know. That is not true. He has got a case to answer. He must answer equally. Thank you, Kathy.
Morning, Host Cathy, and all SAFM listeners. Host Cathy, I'm thinking this commission, the Madlanga Commission and Ad hoc Committee, has brought to light that each and every citizen from now on, they should know that their vote is their voice.
Good morning, Cathy. Mashallah and Mlife are in court. The FA would have enrolled those cases because they think, they believe they have enough proof to arrest the people. They've been told that the paid it has already secured over 40 convictions over the span of their existence. So when we speak about moving things beyond reproducible doubt, we have enough on the table already.
Morning, Kathy and the listeners. You know, the way you are starting the show today, as if you were reading my mind on weekend when I was saying, right now, whatever the information or whatever the scandals that have been taken out, we are not sure what's going to happen with them. But all I was trying to say is that I really appreciate that we knew now things that we never knew before, because we thought everything was just fine, especially with the SAPS. Let me not say we, let me say I. Like, really, it's so scary, it's so worrying, everything that is coming out. But I'm glad that they are coming out. And then to say what's going to happen is another thing. But I'm glad that we know now. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, Cathy Mafuta. Yeah, Cathy, I would like to talk about the US-Africa relations in terms of the reports around the removal of Mali from the visa bond program. I think, Cathy, this action by the US is intended to divide and rule the alliance of the West African states. That's very unfortunate. I don't think it's a genuine move to remove Mali from that program. Again, Kathy, for Mali, I think their retaliation to the visa bond program by imposing this a similar requirement to U.S. citizens, I think it's a lesson to African states that they cannot agree and give to all U.S. demands to them, but they've got a way to negotiate and do better in terms of how they deal with the U.S. requirements, Kathy.
Morning, Kathy. Regarding Malanga Commission and ad hoc committee, yeah, I still want to see more. I still want to hear more. And we have to know as South Africans where we are going, and if these people are taken to court, really, many of them must be sentenced. I mean, stealing billions while people are dying. It's not good. It's not fair. You know, because you've got the political connections. No, it's not fair. This is Taru from Deep Roof. Thank you very much. Have a nice one.
All right. Thanks for those reflections that you've been sharing with us. And yeah, I do think that it's important for us to process what we want to see as the outcome of all of these processes. And this is beyond what Parliament, the finding that Parliament will come to, the finding that the Madlanga Commission will come to. But what do we want as South Africans to see happening here? Because some of these individuals are still serving in positions on a day-to-day basis. What should happen in the interim? All right, on that note, let's take you back to the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry.
Of the matters at hand, and what started out as a broad inquiry into the state's criminal justice and intelligence systems is now drilling into the tough questions, now with the ballistics expert Brigadier Meshach Mkhabela giving evidence. Let's listen in.
So it's fair to say it's not just a function of you're not getting the right number of people. There's also now the extra burden that crime is increasing. I think it's one trying to understand where is the problem that causes what you've described in terms of shortage of resources and these poor turnaround times.
That is a correct, Commissioner. It's a variety of things, but amongst them is that we don't have sufficient members.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cheskalson.
Mr. Cheskalson, just before you leave this section, in paragraph 17.5 of the statement, Brigadier, I just wanted clarity for my benefit. The digital match you are referring to here, is it between the cartridges that were recovered and brought to the laboratory and others that were found in other scenes, or is the match between the test cartridge and the cartridge that was recovered. I just need that clarity. What is the match between?
Commissioners, is a match between specimens or cartridge keys that were on the database. Now the system is comparing those with the new one just acquired. Yes.
Again, just before that, Mr. Chairperson, this 500 is against 28,000. I've been agonizing over it in my mind. I'm trying to think, for example, first maybe.
This October month, SFM joins the world in breast cancer awareness. We bring you conversations that highlight the importance of early detection, survivor stories that inspire hope, and expert advice that could save lives. Together, let's spread awareness and support the fight against breast cancer. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
This October month, SFM focuses on cybersecurity awareness. As we live more of our lives online, staying safe in the digital world has never been more important. From spotting cyber threats to protecting your personal data, SAFM brings you the conversations that empower you to stay secure. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and a whole country affected by gender-based violence. All on your favorite SABC radio station. Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC.
The expert has identified hits on the system that the expert believes to be good hits. And there's now to be hits on the system that the expert believes to be good hits. And there's now to be a non-digital, a manual microscopic analysis of these various hits. How long does it take between the point at which the expert has requisitioned the real exhibits to the point at which you have another expert available in front of a microscope to look at those exhibits? What sort of delay is there between stages 2 and 3?
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, depending on the rate at which possible hits are generated, because there's a lot. Once generated, the actual case file must be retrieved and an additional lab number must be registered for that specific case before it can be assigned to the analyst. That process requires that some case files are old. You must first wait for them to be retrieved from the archives before you can start to assign them. Again, there's only 3 officers that are assigned to confirm those possible hits physically in the on the comparison microscope. So if there are only 3 and you find one case might have linkages to multiple crime scenes, it means you must retrieve all those case files. Say, for example, you find one case which has more than 10 or 20 multiple hits that you need to compare with. You'll have to take all those case files, open each seal bag, view them on the microscope until you are satisfied that indeed you have a positive hit. So in that area alone as well, you also have over, depending on each lab, you also have a backlog of those printouts that are possible hits, where you need to retrieve all the case files to prepare them, to assign them to an analyst. You also have cases, you also have backlog in that area. I normally call that last stage a cherry on top, because an analyst feels excited when you see that the hits that you have identified has been confirmed as positive. It gives you that pleasure that at least a crime will be resolved. The investigating officer will know that this case that has been troubling me is linked to this other case which I was not aware of. Maybe the suspect might also have been arrested in that case, which may resolve the case. So if that process is not happening in real time, it's also not good. And that is where we are as well, commissioners.
And Brigadier, how much of the delay between stages 2 and 3 has to do with practical reality? You have to find exhibits from archives and processes like that, which one has to live with. And how much of it deals with human resource constraints? You say you have 3 analysts to sit in front of the microscopes. How much of the delay is due to the fact that you have only 3 microscopes, and how much could you speed things up? 3 analysts to do the microscopic examinations. How much more quickly could it go if you had more analysts?
Commissioner, that is a problem, because those 3 officers that I've mentioned, they are not only there to do the confirmation, they are also team leaders. They manage members under them, day-to-day management of members. So in addition to their duties, they must confirm these possible hits. And if I'm saying there are 3, at the most, you'll find out they don't have enough time to spend only on those cases, because they are multitasked as well. So it has to do with human resource, Commissioner. And that's why you may find out you have cases that were identified maybe more than 12 months not being confirmed, because you can't reach to those cases as you like to.
So did I understand you correctly? You're saying that the system has generated hits, the reviewer has confirmed on the screen that these are likely hits and that they need microscopic analysis, and there might still be a delay of 12 months before you have an analyst who can get to the microscope.
That is correct, Commissioners.
Brigadier, have you done an analysis of what your staff shortages are? In an ideal world, what would the staff complement of your office and the other ABIS offices around the country look like?
Commissioner, I've done that. I've done that exercise in consultation with the provincial regional commanders. I've got an idea in terms of our ideal and the current, in order for us to be able to be fully staffed. I've got the figures that I've worked on, Commissioners.
Do you have them available for us, or could you, I mean, if you don't have them readily available for us, could you give us a table of what your current complement is, what your shortages are?
Commissioner, I have rough notes where I worked on. I can give the figures, and this is only for IBIS, not ballistics. I can give the figures if it pleases the Commission.
It would be, I think it would be valuable for us.
Commissioner, I'll start it first by the current. What do we have in each regions, and what is the shortage, and what is the ideal? At head office here in Pretoria, Commissioners, we have got 16 IBIS operators at the moment.
Sorry, Brigadier, might I ask if we now go back to paragraph 8, because it may be useful to break it down. So paragraph 8, you've got just a sort of fairly bland table about the regional spread of ballistics analysts. Maybe if you could break up that 58 figure in head office into, actually take a note, as you said, how many analysts that you had, I think, at acquisition stage. But can you do those figures, and then we'll annotate them with reference to these figures in paragraph 8?
Well, first I must just mention that those figures that are there, they include ballistics analyst and IBIS analyst, and they don't include the support staff. It's only members that are actively involved in case analysis between both IBIS and IBIS, the figures on the board. And we also excluded the mechanical because we don't have a problem with mechanical subsection. Right. And the one that I have on my notes is now only IBIS, where I have the current, the ideal, and the shortage.
Can you give us those figures?
In Pretoria, which we called HQ, we've got 16 IBIS analysts. The shortage, according to the number of machines and the work volume, is 14. Ideally, you must have 30 in order for you to be able to get to all the work. In the KZN, you have got 7 IBIS analysts currently. The shortage, according to the volume, the machines that they have is 7. Ideally, you need to have 14. In the Western Cape, they have got 7 IBIS analysts. Ideally, the shortage is 7. Ideally, they're supposed to be 14. In the Eastern Cape, there are currently 3. Their shortage is 5. Total, they're supposed to have 8, which is an ideal. So you need a total of 66 IBIS analysts nationally to be able to run the equipment optimally in real time. In other words, we have got a shortage of 33. You have 33. You are operating with half shortage currently.
And you could accommodate those additional 33 without having to buy any extra licenses, any extra hardware. Your existing contract would cover them all.
That is correct, Commissioners.
Now, I want to put a scenario to you. You've been describing bottlenecks at those 3 different stages that cause delays, certainly in excess of a year, between when the initial ballistics examination, ballistics analysis takes place and when the system generates a hit that can be communicated to the investigating officers. If we jump ahead to an infographic that we'll get to later, it's on page 14 of your annexure file, and I must emphasize here, before we describe this infographic, you'll see the one on the screen has all sorts of redactions on it. That's because it concerns a number of cases which haven't yet been brought to court and are still, and the investigating officers are still gathering evidence, and they've asked us not to identify the specifics of the cases so that the suspects, other than the shooters, don't know that the ballistics confirmations have taken place. So I don't want you to mention any of the names of the cases, but let's just look at these cases. And the ones that are, these are the cases that have been linked to to 4 of the guns seized in Bramley. There's a 5th gun that comes from elsewhere. But what we see is more than 20 different cases. I think you even address it in your report. We see that 24 different cases were linked to the guns seized at Bramley at the time that this infographic was prepared. We saw, I think on Annexure M1, that by October it was now 29 cases. What that means is that 24 at the time of this infographic, 29 by last week, 29 different investigations had been proceeding in parallel with one another. Without the investigating officers in each one of those 29 knowing that the weapons used in their case were the same as the weapons used in 29 or 28 other different cases. And so you have detectives in one part of the country operating in isolation there, detectives in another part of the country running their investigations. If they speak to each other, suddenly, and they start pooling all of their information, suddenly all of their investigations proceed at a much, much quicker rate. Some of them may even be tied up immediately. If your system operates with delays of more than a year because of staff shortages, the real cost of that is that you have these investigations all over the country where detectives are essentially working in the dark with reference to very important information about their cases. And a whole lot of wasted investigative time is being spent, which would be saved if the information in your system could be made available in a real-time basis. Am I missing anything in that proposition?
Commissioner, that is the real essence. That is our concern. And that is what we want to see being resolved, because we have the capability to assist investigating officers out there to resolve their cases speedily so that they don't operate in silos. And the only solution to that is this system. But for you to be able to optimally utilize that system, you need to operate it on real time.
Just accepting that answer, perhaps also to put this proposition for your comment. The chairperson earlier spoke about the integrity of the human involvement in this process. Now, in this case, we've had evidence that, I think it's Brigadier Makhotlwe, that he had not linked the casings, and the reason that the investigators decided to have another lab, your sister lab, look at this is because he had mentioned in a conversation that he's found other linkages. So that's, and yet it wasn't in his report. That suggests that the human element is also important to achieve what Mr. Chaskalson is putting to you, that the linkages would have been established and the investigators would not have been working in silos, not aware that their cases are linked. I think the simple proposition I'm making is there is also an element of the integrity of your experts as well.
Thanks, Commissioner. If I can address that specifics. in terms of timelines. My analogy is that in terms of the timelines when that conversation, the supposed conversation took place, it was around 2024, around October month. And the objective evidence that we have regarding IBIS is that the specific specimens was only acquired on the IBIS system on the 6th of September. So it was acquired after the conversation have taken place. And it has, again, to go through the process where it was viewed, which was in 2025. So if that conversation took place, whatever the member says to the investigating officer by then is neither here nor there, because he wouldn't have known at that point that there are these more than 24 linkages that IBIS has produced. The work had not yet started at IBIS when that conversation took place, Commissioners. I submit.
Brigadier, we will go through that in detail because I think the timeline is important, and there is another important conclusion that I want to highlight for the Commission, which is that if that knowledge wasn't available in the IBIS system at the time, and yet it appears to have been communicated, it must have come from outside the IBIS system, which has its own implications. But we will go in detail through that timeline because, as the Brigadier says, at the time that the original conversation took place, or allegedly took place, which was May, and we know that some conversation had taken place because the letter of the prosecutor requesting additional protection for the detectives referred to that conversation and referred to it in August. When the prosecutor referred to that conversation in August, nothing had been entered in the IBIS system yet. So whoever communicated that to the detectives got that information from outside the IBIS system, not from inside the IBIS system. There was nothing in the IBIS system at that stage. But we will go step by step to show that.
I think the simple proposition that I was making was that even in that ideal turnaround time, that assuming you had all the resources and all the necessary stations, and you're achieving your ideal turnaround times, which has the effect that Mr. Chaskalson is proposing to you, it's still the human element, the integrity of the individuals or the people that your experts who interact with the system in real time is still a factor, would still be a factor. I think that's what I'm testing.
Although our processes are demarcated, if we're speaking of a ballistics analyst has a role where it comes and ends, and then the role of IBIS takes over. So if a ballistics has examined the case or analyzed the case and issued a 2-2 statement, he hands over to IBIS. His role is done. He wouldn't know what happened thereafter. Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
The second proposition that I wanted to put to you is that your IBIS system is of particular value in relation to organized crime. And I want to put that proposition to you on this basis, that if you have a random murder, someone gets into a fight, pulls out a gun and shoots somebody, chances are that usually that weapon is not going to be linked to another crime. Maybe, but in most cases I would imagine it is not. Is that maybe you could, if you think that something that I'm putting to you on this basis is wrong, just stop me as I put it. And then let me continue. If you're dealing with organized crime, taxi violence, political killings, criminal gang-related matters. There, I would imagine that the incidence of the same gun being linked to several crimes is much higher.
Commissioner, we have seen that with taxi violence, the CIT, cash in transit, what they called is in Kabi, the hire for murders, gangs. You'll find that there's one particular firearm that you see terrorizing a particular area. For example, you'll see the areas of Ivory Park, Tembisa. You'll see this particular firearm which has generated multiple hits, but the firearm is not recovered. You see that. And that tells you that there's one person who's actually terrorizing the area. You see that in areas like Harankua, in areas like when you go to the northern part of Port Elizabeth, in the gang-infested area in the Western Cape, you will find out there's this particular firearm that is going around, and the IBC is able to generate those intelligence to show that there's a firearm. So yes, it happens, and we have that experience that in terms of your taxi violence, CIT, either one of our suspicions was that, especially with CIT, was that maybe there's someone who is hiring the same firearm to different gangs, because you'll find that firearm, especially AK-47, you'll find one AK-47 that always appears in many multiple cases, but is never recovered. Now you ask yourself, is it still the same group, or is it hired to different groups? But we have a lot of those kind of cases, commissioners.
Because what my proposition to you is that where you have SAPs investigating those sorts of organized crime situations, the need for real-time ballistics evidence is at its highest. And so if the system as itself is currently not functioning in a way that can generate real-time results, then you need one of two solutions. Either you need to provide dedicated ABIS and ballistics access and capacity to the task teams or investigation teams dealing with those sorts of crimes, like was the case in the PKTT, where they had dedicated ballistics capacity assigned to them. Or you need to have a system that will fast-track their requests within your existing system. Because it's those kinds of investigations in respect of which instant ballistics results are so important. Do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I have a comment, commissioners. I would say we need to capacitate so that you can be able to deal with the requests as they come. Not necessarily to deploy your resources to work with the task teams. Because at the end of the day, you need to maintain the independence of your analyst so that they don't become contaminated by working with the investigators and discussing the cases with the investigators. So if the lab is capacitated enough, it will be able to provide the much needed assistance to whoever organized unit, task team, whatever. You will be able to provide that services, but not necessarily to be part of that establishment. That is my take on that one, commissioners.
Thank you.
Before you continue, Mr. Shaskalson, you, Brigadier, you gave us figures on the current numbers and shortages insofar as human resources or the human resource section of the ABIS is concerned. Have you done a similar exercise with regard to the ballistics analysis subsection?
Commissioner, I've done it, and when the Commissioner mentioned that, the figures are there. But that is actually one area that keeps me awake at night. Commissioner, the figure speaks for themselves. I always say if anyone wants to appreciate the level of high crime involving firearms in South Africa, one must just visit my strong room where I keep exhibits. Then one will appreciate that we are living in a dangerous country. Commissioner, at any given point, I have more than 29,000 firearms, and each of those firearms, a victim has been killed. And I only have 42 analysts to handle that volume of work. My case manager commander approaches me not long to take me to the case, to the strong safe, to show me that, Brigadier, I have now run out of space to put my exhibits. I don't know where to put them anymore. I'm putting them in a bin because I can't file them. When I started with ballistic, we had one safe. Currently, we had to repurpose a museum to make it a safe. It's now full as we speak. We don't have space anymore. Like I said, we receive more than what we can process, commissioners. So only Pretoria, 42 analysts. Those 42 analysts, they must take leave, study leave, sick leave. Any other, they must go to court, they must go for consultation. So you can imagine, Commissioner. So that is one area, Commissioner, that is giving me sleepless nights. I can only submit, Commissioner.
I take it that most of those firearms that are in storage are unlicensed.
It's a variety, Commissioner, but the fact of the matter is are there because a crime has been committed. All of them, they've got case numbers. Be it as attempted murder, but the majority of them are cases where someone has been killed and they need to be speedily worked. If you check on the board there, if I have 450 cases that were registered in 2022, it's now more than 3 years. That case is in court. Now one can imagine what happened to the case. It has been postponed every day because of an outstanding ballistic report. And as a result, some of the courts are now relying on the Section 342, capital letter A of Criminal Procedure Act inquiry. They send you those inquiry to come and explain why is the delay in obtaining a ballistic report. And IO calls you, says, my case has been remanded for the last time. And now you must now jump the queue. You must jump those cases that were registered in 2022 and 2023 and address this recent case. If you don't do that, the court will issue a warrant of your arrest because they need you to go and explain why the case is old. And when I remark on this one, commissioners, there's an incident where the former commander of ballistics was arrested on his last day of service, on his birthday. He was handcuffed in our presence because of contempt of court. He could not attend the Section 342A inquiry in Stilfontein in the Northwest. They put him at the back of the car, handcuffed to Stilfontein on a Friday afternoon when his friends had booked him a surprise present at somewhere in Delstrom to go and celebrate. That has to be postponed. We had to see to it that he is released on that Friday afternoon. And that is what we are facing on a day-to-day basis. Instead of me preparing the cases, I must travel to court and explain why the case is delayed. Out of maybe 70% of cases that we complete per month, more than 70% of them are urgent requests from court. So when that happened to our colleagues, we were in tears, literally. And that is what we are facing with on a daily basis, Commissioners.
Brigadier, maybe you could take us through paragraphs 9 and 10 at this point. I was going to deal with all of this at the end, but we've actually dealt with it now. So can you just explain these figures in paragraph 9 and then in paragraph 10?
Commissioners, I always draw statistics on a daily basis to see where we stand with our performance, with our production. So paragraph 9 is a depiction of our cases that were registered and still to be analyzed as of the 17th of October 2025. I've given the age analysis of those cases. As you can see, the head office, which is Pretoria, we are servicing 6 provinces. That's why our case volume is high. We are servicing Mpumalanga, Limpopo, Northwest, Northern Cape, and Gauteng, and Free State. We have 29,000 cases that needs to be analyzed. And from these 29,000, in terms of age analysis, we've got 450 which were registered in 2022. They still need to be analyzed. We've got over 6,000 cases that were registered in 2023. They still need to be analyzed. We've got over 11,900 cases that were registered in 2024. They must still be analyzed. 2025 alone, we are already over 10,000 cases that still need to be analyzed. The same goes with KZN and Western Cape. What I've noticed now, Commissioners, KZN used to be the second highest in terms of the number of cases. But I see now Western Cape is starting to overtake the Western Cape, the KZN. And it makes sense when you watch on the news, there's always firearms that are recovered, multiple firearms in the Western Cape. Now you can see Western Cape has got over 5,000 cases that still need to be analyzed. Eastern Cape, they are quite a small office, but it's also a busy province. They've got over 2.5 cases that needs to be analyzed. When you add everything nationally, we have got over 41,000 cases, but that number fluctuates. If we check today, it's even more now because we normally rely on overtime. My office alone, financially, we get around 4 million overtime. This is the last month, we have already depleted that overtime. And that is the money that assists us at least to reach to the urgent request. So now we must wait for the next financial year to be able to see how much will be allocated. So without overtime now, we are just going to rely, I don't know, on our members, how we can push them. We are pushing them. So that is the reality, Commissioners, in terms of paragraph 9. It is that cases that are not yet analyzed. They still need to be analyzed. And some of them, depending on the volume. One thing that we have noticed now, I don't know whether it's a trend, maybe, especially with CITs. I've noticed that maybe it's easy nowadays to procure ammunition. Because in one scene of a CIT, you may find that you collect over 100 cartridge cases on the scene. And it happens a lot. So it takes a while to analyze those multiple exhibits. Maybe the criminals these days, in the olden days, you'll find one cartridge case of AK-47 and the other calibers. But these days, maybe it is easy for criminals to acquire ammunition because they don't spare them, they use them, they make sure. And that creates too much work for us because now it takes longer for an analyst to finish a case if it has got multiple exhibits. The second table, Commissioners, is the IBIS work that I explained earlier on. The figures here include the 2 last phases that I've mentioned. Phase 2, where we view the images, and the last phase, phase 3, where we must confirm the possible hits. In Pretoria alone, we have got over 38,000 cases that...
Sorry, Brigadier, can I just clarify that? So are you saying that the figure in Pretoria, 343. That reflects cases that have already been acquired in the ABIS system, but haven't yet been reviewed or confirmed.
That's correct, not being viewed and confirmed. Yes, commissioners, there's two figures.
And is this just, is this 38,000, is this 38,000 cases, or 38,000 entries, or is it 38,000 possible hits that have been generated by the system?
Commissioner, I have a breakdown, but I just mixed them. I know we have got over 22,000 those that needs to be viewed. Then the remainder is those that have been viewed, they still need to be confirmed. So I added them together. So in Pretoria is 38,000, KZN is 35,000, Western Cape is 21,000, Eastern Cape is over 13,000. That gives you a total of over 108,000 cases that IBIS still has to work on.
This disproportionality or disproportionate numbers you've got between head office, which you say is 6 provinces, and then you have KZN, which seems to be seriously disproportionate. Is that a staffing issue? Is that a machine issue? Or is it just a crime issue?
Commissioner, it's the crime issue. If you check a province like KZN, largely there's many firearms in that province. And if you check Gauteng, it's Gauteng, and maybe Mpumalanga contributes a lot with the rhino pouching. It also contributes a lot. So it's the crime patterns.
But sorry, Brigadier, can I take you up on that? Because it seems to me that if it was simply an issue of crime as opposed to staffing, you would see similar proportions in the ballistics table in paragraph 9. But it does seem that the ballistics section of KZN, I mean, roughly, the ballistics side of KZN is approximately a sixth as its number of outstanding investigators, and approximately a sixth of those in Gauteng. It's just under 5,000 versus just under 30,000.